Welcome, friend, to episode 22 of my podcast, The View from the Crow's Nest. And today's podcast is going to be a double bill. Very quickly, an idea for something that came this morning and the story behind that. And secondly, something to do with business and a mistake which I think so many people make with their businesses. Even seasoned business people make the same mistake. And it's a real shame because it really cripples so many businesses. And I hope I can help you avoid that mistake potentially if you're in business or if you work in a company and you want to help them avoid the mistake. So the first one, an idea. I had a dream last night. And I very often have very vivid dreams, which oddly enough usually involve me having to battle creatures or people, kind of like zombies or something like that. Usually they're very violent. I don't know why. But in this particular dream, I was going through some very realistic process. It was, I think I'd walked onto an estate or something, some like aristocratic estate, and just kind of like decided to have a little wander around the house, even though there are people in it. And then I got challenged when I got in the house. And the funny thing was, in the dream, I remember thinking, hey, wait a minute, what's happening here? Because there was a bit of a twist, which I'll tell you in a second. But I was like, what's happening here would make a really good story, maybe a good film. And quite often I'll have an idea in my dream and then in my dreams and then wake myself up from the dream so that I can write down the idea. Sometimes it's musical, sometimes it's a story. But it's really annoying when I wake myself up because obviously I then have to go get my phone, turn it on, write it down, whatever, and then try and get back to sleep, and it always wakes me up. And for the first time, I think ever, I had one of those dreams, or I had a dream, and then I was like, hey, this could be a good idea wait a minute, am I dreaming or is this real? No, I'm dreaming. I'm pretty sure I'm dreaming. So I want to remember this and I want to write this down, but I don't want to wake up. This is what I was thinking in my dream. So when I wake up, I'm going to remember this and then write it down. And the first thing, when I open my eyes, the first thing I remember or thought about this morning was this idea. So I was really chuffed with myself, with my subconscious, for allowing me to carry on sleeping whilst having this idea. And the idea isn't anything amazing, but I think it's pretty interesting. It's kind of a funky twist. So I will give you it's obviously not developed at all, but I'll give you a very quick pitch. It's a boy, probably an American, probably around about the age of 14, something like that, 15, is on a school trip to the UK, and maybe he's on a tour of a royal place or an aristocratic house, Buckingham Palace, I don't know, something like that. And he's a bit cheeky, he's a bit rebellious, this boy. So he grabs his best mate and he goes, quick, let's duck out. And they kind of run through a side door where they're not meant to be, going or what have you. And, they run around the palace or the house or whatever it is. And they're being a bit cheeky. And then they get stopped by, by a butler, I don't know, someone like that. And here's a little twist. The butler's kind of like, we didn't expect you back here for another 2 months or 3 months or something like that. And the boy's like, what? And basically the twist is that the boy is the spitting image of the grandson or the son of the family who lives there or whatever. I'm stretching reality here, I know. Basically the boy assumes the identity of this aristocrat who just happens to be on study leave in America, and it's a comedy. It's kind of, I'm thinking, kind of like Goonies, a bit of adventure, maybe not as much as Goonies, but very much a Disney, Disney type film for families and whatnot. So that was the idea that spawned from this. It's not my best idea. I'm sure I will develop it probably, and hopefully it'll be more interesting and I'll get a better plot and iron out some appalling plot holes, etc. But I share this partly to share the idea, but mostly to share the funny thing about being able to remember from my dream but not wake myself up. So I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that. If you have, let me know. I'm sure I'm not the only person, but it would be nice to hear from other people, your experience. Second thing I wanted to talk about is the business mistake. And this is a real terror because it just happens time and time again. And that is, and I've said this before on the podcast, people focus so much when they're in business, particularly when they're starting out in business, they're focusing on their product, they're focusing by using their experience or their skills or something they're passionate about, and they develop the product, and they don't give enough thought to marketing. Marketing is almost an afterthought. Whereas the marketing actually not only should be a major part of what you're doing. If you have other podcasts about 80-20, I was talking about actually it should be 20% product, 80% marketing of that product, but it should be involved from the very beginning in terms of the commercial nature of the product that you're making. And so many people make the mistake of thinking this is a great idea. As soon as people hear about it, they're going to use it, buy it, whatever, and then have this crushing point where it doesn't happen like that. And actually, people don't see it in the same light as the creator. They don't see the value of it, or there are problems when they bring it to market that they didn't foresee. And often this could be sorted if they put far more thought into the marketing and sales and actually spoke to somebody who's going to be trying to sell it. Somebody who's a professional salesperson, for example, will always be going, well, hang on, what's the angle? What's the story? You know, they'll try and look at it from the customer point of view and pick holes in it until they've got the story sorted, you know, until they know, okay, yeah, now I can see how we'll sell this, etc. And I saw it again today with somebody's business that I was on the phone to, and it was a real shame. I gave some advice about a month ago to them, and they said, yeah, that sounds great, and then they just ignored it and decided to go in literally the polar opposite direction. And I believe that they are basically putting a nail in the coffin of their business before they've even launched it, pretty much. And they're already having problems because they are doing things the wrong way around. They're building the product to see that it works functionality-wise, but not making sure that it's what the market wants, and actually focusing on the marketing, how they're going to get it to exactly the people they need to get it to, etc. And I think they're in for a rude awakening and a bit of a waste of time and resources in a short while. And it's a real shame. So please don't make that mistake if you're going into business for yourself. If you're already in business, please don't make that mistake. And if you're working for an employer and you think that they're making the mistake, help them so that please they don't make that mistake, because it's really, really common. So what's the answer? The answer is businesses, or at least for-profit businesses, even non-profits, but for-profit businesses are in the business to make profit. That's what they do. And therefore, sales and marketing are paramount, absolutely paramount activities. Don't belittle the salesperson. Don't be thinking that there's some, a salesperson. I don't really want one of those people around, or I'm not a salesperson. You need a salesperson. If you're going to succeed in business, you need somebody who is very sales savvy. You need somebody who's got their heads on marketing as well, which could be the same person, but they are two very different disciplines. Although obviously very related. Sales sits under marketing overall. Don't scrimp. Don't think you can do without it. Don't think if you're not a salesperson, it's all right, I can handle the sales. You might be all right at it, but unless you're prepared to really study sales and study marketing and actually learn, and it's a full-time job in and of itself, pay somebody else. Get somebody else who knows what they're talking about, who knows what they're doing. Your business will thank you. You will thank you. Don't make the mistake, I'm reiterating this, but don't make the mistake of thinking it's not really so important, or it's something that you can deal with later once you've launched the business. Deal with it right at the beginning, before you launch. Make it part of your launch strategy. Make sure you know how you're taking the product to market. You know how you're selling it. You know exactly what the benefits are and how they're going to be put across to the customer or the client. And you know exactly what their problems they're going to have, the questions they're going to ask, the pain points you need to address. Build that in to the product and the product experience. Generally speaking, sometimes sometimes the customer is the user of the product. Sometimes the customer is somebody else other than the user of the product. So, for example, Facebook, the user of the product is you and me and everybody else who's on Facebook, but we are not necessarily the customers. The customers are the businesses that pay to advertise to the you and me. So there's an example of where the customer and the user is not the same. So sometimes it is. You buy a shampoo, the customer and the user is the person who buys shampoo. Although that said, arguably the user is the person who buys shampoo, the customer is the buying agent at the supermarket or whoever is responsible for stocking that product. Really, they're the customer. So always think about that separation. Think about who you're actually appealing to and build the product so that, or at least build an area dedicated and devoted to selling the product to the customer and not necessarily the user. That's, the distinction you should be thinking of. If it's the same person, that makes life a bit easier, but if it's not the same demographic, it's not the same type of person, then you need to think about how you're putting that message across in the right way to the actual customer, to the person who's going to push the button and spend money with you for that, and talking in their language, addressing their concerns and their problems. Build that in. How are you going to get to them, and how are you going to convince them that what you've got is what they really, really need? Please don't make the mistake of just building something and then hoping or thinking I'll get round to the other part later, because that's a recipe for ouch. Right, rant over. I hope you found that interesting, useful maybe. Hopefully you found it useful, but regardless, thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate that. And if you've got this far, you are a super, super champion. And I would go one step further and say, come and visit me on Twitter at Romeo Crow. Come and drop a line. Tell me if you found this useful, if you didn't find this useful, if there's something else you want me to cover. If you've got any questions at all, any feedback, I would love to hear from you. And on that note, I'm signing off. This is Romeo Crow out. Take care of yourselves. Doodles.